To my video. Today I'm going to talk about SaaS analytics tools landscape. If you are a product manager or in a related role in any SaaS or e-commerce company where people sign up, onboard, have a conversion trial sort of process, and then they, pay up and get into the retention phase, and finally some of them cancel in the churn phase. There is a lot of data being generated because of the interactions of all these users with the product, which is, especially in the conversion phase. There is a term that is popular in the last few years called PQL, product qualified leads. So based on this data and interaction data, which people are, who amongst the people who come to your website and interact with the trial of your product are actually qualified leads. And to make sense of all of that and more, there is a lot of data tools that have sprung up in the last, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. So this is my attempt to organize it all for you, so it's easy for you to understand which tools to use and when. So at the root category, there is data, data analytics and data warehouses. So things like Redshift, which is AWS, Postgres, BigQuery, which is Google, Azure, which is Microsoft, and all the others that exist. And forever, there's been a category called business intelligence, starting from very established legacy players, but also things like Power BI, Tableau, more recently Looker, ThoughtSpot, Periscope Data, Mode Analytics that put a layer between all this raw data and users, so that people who are not data scientists can easily look at all the reporting and data without having to spend too much time. So they are basically democratizing data access, and that is actionable for you. So data business intelligence is the superset, but it's a lot of data, and they collect all kinds of data through ETL tools as well as direct integrations with SAP and every other type of data warehouse in number one above. Then there is a specific category of tools which I club under app analytics. And within app analytics, this is mostly to understand how your specific SaaS application is performing. There are performance debugging tools which have been around for a while, things like App Dynamics, Splunk, Datadog, Sumo Logic, mostly used by engineering and DevOps to understand the performance of the system. It's not pervasive, but you can spin it up and understand where the application is taking more time, and then debug it. The For product managers and marketing managers, I divide this into two big categories. One is called click analytics, and the other is called event analytics. On click analytics, there are one big name, Google Analytics, which is free, and Adobe Analytics, which is used by a lot of enterprises that they're really focused on page views. So what are now being called vanity metrics, but initially when the web and everything just started, people want to know how many people are showing up on the website, and what they're doing and where they're coming from and what their behavior pattern is like. So over time, Google Analytics is pretty complex, and it's got a lot of features. It's very easy to integrate. So you can take your JavaScript and integrate into your website, and all of the data will start showing up. There is a real time option which allows you to understand in real time who's on your site. So this is really good for debugging. But there is also audience acquisition and behavior. Audience is who's coming to the website. Acquisition is where are they coming from, and behavior is what they're doing. And the entire Google framework is built around connecting search and ads into the same sort of hooking everything up together, so you can understand where these users are coming from and what you can do to get more people. So Google Analytics is primarily for a marketing manager or anybody who's running any kind of marketing campaign to acquire users. Now, this was fine and good for several years, and everybody in an organization used Google Analytics that had anything to do with web. Google Analytics is pretty much a web tool, but there are Firebase that is they bought that integrated that allows you to do mobile apps and such. Uh, so 5, 6 years ago, maybe a little bit more, there were companies that sprung up. Chief among them are Mixpanel and Amplitude, which have the philosophy that you don't want to collect all the page views and everything that's going on your website or an app, because that's too much information. It's a deluge of information, and to make sense of it, it becomes really hard. So what they said is that you need to have a hypothesis, and you need to know your product and understand what are some of the significant events, and that's the name, the event analytics. And you go in and you specify certain events in certain places and create, then be able to do funnel analysis and retention cohorts. These are the two big things, cohort analysis, that Amplitude in particular and Mixpanel focus on. There are other tools like Heap Analytics and Full Story that capture all the information, even if you don't define an event. But they are also now, they haven't had that much success as Mixpanel and Amplitude, which has become the dominant and prevailing philosophy that you need to know what you are doing before you go instrument. And they're also sort of adding certain features to do event analytics. The downside with Mixpanel Amplitude is that it takes a lot of time for you to understand, get set up, because you have to go in and understand your product, understand how to implement, all these tracking calls, then be able to create these funnels and cohorts. And the way they define a cohort is pretty straightforward. If you have a hypothesis that somebody clicks on action A, like button A and button 2, and then they retain much longer, then that becomes your cohort. So, or you can have a default cohort by a week, and then you can track people, and how they retain, and what the funnel looks like, etc. There are other companies that provide heat maps, which is, they tell you why somebody is doing a certain thing. Because with funnel analysis and retention cohorts, you only know that 100 people showed up on the sign up page, and only 50 logged in, and only 25 bought something, and put it in a cart, and only 5 bought. But you don't know if there is something that is, why they're doing it. If there is a problem with the website, they can't, it's not loading, you'll have to infer all those things. So heat maps is a way, especially Full Story, which is a fairly new company, and they record everything that is happening, any change that is made to the DOM. They download the entire DOM, the basic DOM and all the delta changes, and recreate the whole thing. And that becomes your heat map, and a sort of like a video recording without it being a video, and that's very useful. Now, as you can see, I've only listed 5, 6 of these click and event analytics tools, but in reality, there are probably 20 more tools, vendors in each category, including heat maps. So, what has sprung up in very interesting company called Segment and Telium. Google Tag Manager has already existed, which says that uh, if you aren't sure which tool you should use, so supposing you're confused between, or not decided between Mixpanel and Amplitude, instead of going and instrumenting with Mixpanel first and then doing the same process with Amplitude, you go ahead and implement Segment. And Segment becomes this data routing tool which sucks in all these events from your website or your app, and then routes it to whichever tool you want. So you could very easily rip and replace any analytics tool. So they become the glue between your app and all of these different analytics tools, and they're doing pretty well. So I would highly recommend taking a look at Segment in particular. Now you would wonder that if you have all this data and you analyze it and you know what's going on, you want to take some actions. And there is a a large number of tools in this number 8 category, which starts from Intercom, Iterable, Pendo, Leanplum, Drift, that allows you to do different things to the customer, like push notifications, in-app, email, and many of them have a component of A/B testing. And very closely followed with these taking action tools. These are also available in Adobe Marketing Cloud, Salesforce Marketing Cloud. IBM has offerings, and each of them has specialized in a certain market, and a certain type of notification. And then A/B testing tools come closely follow these take action tools with things like Adobe Target, Optimizely, VWO, which I highly recommend, Visual Web Optimizer, Aptimize. And together with taking the action, understanding how these separate cohorts are, um, doing, you can do a lot of iterative and very narrow segmentation and marketing. So far we've only talked about data. What comes next is survey tools. So there's a whole bunch of companies that run surveys for you that pop up either in app or an email. They use by product, customer success to get qualitative feedback, NPS scoring outside of just for the data. So they sort of complete the whole journey from understanding what users are doing with click and event analytics all the way down to how they're feeling about your product. In SaaS companies, there is a big component, number 11, which is customer success. And there are lots of companies that are doing customer success workflow like Gainsight, Tatango, Natero, StrideTech, Medallia, etc. And that is, during the retention phase where people might have a problem, they escalate, and the customer success teams have to know about it. Some of these companies are also doing analytics that is based on a lot of data that they get from Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Zendesk, Salesforce, or other places within the organization to really tell you the health score, the health metric of a particular user, a particular account. Finally, there is a small category called SaaS analytics, Profit Well Insight, Bear Metrics, Mean Metrics. These are much smaller companies, and they again follow the same steps of an integration through a JavaScript. And they take a lot of information from your e-commerce tools like Stripe, Recurly, Braintree, Zora, and provide reporting, etc. That can help you understand how it's going. Many of them are free, or ProfitWell is definitely free, and they're much smaller. I think because Curly, Braintree, and Zora, which are pretty big operations, are already providing all these insights. So that rounds up everything I have to say about data analytics tools. So if you have love to hear what you have to what you think, and questions and comments. Thank you very much.